So today we get the Beatitudes, which hopefully many of us learned in Sunday school, and if not, you're hearing it for the first time, well, memorize them like the rest of us had to. The Beatitudes, though, I always appreciate that we get two versions of them, and I always like to appreciate each version for its uniqueness. And one of the things that makes Luke's version of the Beatitudes different than Matthew's version of the Beatitudes is maybe the thing we don't like about it so much, which is that Luke's version has not just blessings, not just Beatitudes, but also woes. And what is that? I think on its surface, we can maybe interpret that as if Jesus is giving a list of, here are things that you get if you're a good boy and girl, and here are things that you get if you're bad. Here are blessings and here are curses. But there are a few things that make me wonder if that is not quite correct. First and foremost, the woes that you hear. That word woe, I mean, that's not something that we say so much these days unless you are an equestrian. But the Greek word for that is more like how should I say? It's almost like a sigh, an expression of compassion, a sort of oh dear, and it doesn't have, I think, a tinge of condemnation or a tinge of hatefulness. It's not the Southern bless your heart. It is a true, genuine sense of, oh, you poor thing. What Jesus is saying to these people who are rich and who are happy and who are spoken well of is, you might think it's good to be you right now, but I have to tell you, it won't always be that way. I'm not so sure that Jesus is laying out for us a sort of how do you play the game, a sort of rules of the game necessarily. That last section he is, but the Beatitudes themselves, I'm not so sure. Luke's gospel is really, really clear in this theme. It begins all the way from the beginning when we get these beautiful, almost like show-opening musical numbers, where Mary sings a song, and Zechariah sings a song, and Simeon sings a song. And that's sort of like, if we're imagining Luke as a musical, then that's how it opens. And these songs are not just songs of punishment, not just songs of reward, they are songs of reversal. They are songs that are telling us, that are calling out to us and say, God and God's kingdom is breaking in. And when God's kingdom breaks in, nothing stays the same. The Beatitudes are no different. They are a reprise of these songs of Luke that is not just about you get something good and you get something bad. It is a song about there is nothing that is staying the same when God comes near. That is the overarching, if we were to summarize the Gospel of Luke, I would summarize it that way. Nothing stays the same when God comes near. And so I'm not so concerned about who's getting the blessings and who's getting the woes in the Beatitudes, because do you know what they all have in common? It doesn't matter whether you are hearing the Beatitudes from Luke's gospel and you are hearing Jesus say these words to you. It doesn't matter whether you are the rich person or the poor person, whether you are the sad person or the happy person. Do you know what you all share in common in that Beatitudes? Whatever you are, you're not going to be that for very long. The shared challenge and the shared good news in the Beatitudes is that whatever you are, however you are right now, when God comes to you, things are about to change. You will not be that any longer. And so today, as we take time to remember our saints, as we take time to remember those who have gone before us, I am reminded when I think on that about how similarly grief operates. Grief is unexpected. Grief can really change you really quickly. Grief is like hearing these Beatitudes, that whatever you think you are right now, when God comes near, even when God comes near to you with this gift of grief, this lifelong friend of grief, expect a change. I see the Beatitudes, and I see it when I myself have experienced funerals of loved ones when I see you all go through it. Grief is like that blessing that we get, that unexpected blessing, where you think, I'm going to be sad and heartbroken for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to be able to get through these next weeks or these next days or these next months. And then that unexpected funny story of your loved one makes you laugh, like a real, true, hearty laugh. I mean, you'll probably experience this moment. Or even, I always witness that those days of a funeral when your family is gathering, and despite the grief that you thought was going to rule the day, you thought was going to contain you for the rest of your life, and then here you are at a funeral and warmed a little bit in your heart by the reuniting of your friends and your family, and that joy and that comfort that comes in the midst of really profound grief. That moment when you realize that grief that you thought was going to control you actually is not. And things will change. And the tears will become an ability to tell stories with smiles and with laughter and with fondness, without this overcoming dread of grief. And maybe some of you are thinking, I don't know, I've not experienced that yet. And that's Jesus' message of the Beatitudes. Just hold on. And those of you of us who have gone through grief have experienced this, I think, from the long haul. For some of us, it takes a day. For some of us, it's a week. For some of us, it's a month. For some of us, it's a decade. But grief does not have the final word. It is a gift to us. It does not have the final word. And when God comes near to us with it, you can expect that unexpected laughter, that blessedness. And also, I have experienced that grief works in the opposite way. It is a woe. But a woe in a good sense. That even when it has been decades, and we think that the memory of someone is just drifting off into space, those days in which we maybe even think, I don't even remember what that person sounds like anymore. Those sorts of moments. And then grief, and this is the hardest thing. And so for those of you that are maybe thinking, well, I haven't experienced this yet, you will. A sight, a sound, sometimes a food, a place, all of a sudden, that is able to just trigger that pain of grief out of nowhere. That when you thought, I was happy, I was over this, grief is no longer here, I'm done. And then all of a sudden, there it shows up. And what a gift that is. What a gift that is, even though it doesn't feel like it. That even when you maybe were suspecting that person's memory has been fading, no, it hasn't. It's still there. So grief operates like these blessings and these woes. It will bring you laughter and dancing and joy when you least expect it, and it will bring you sorrow and weeping when you least expect it. We celebrate All Saints' Day. Really, this is one of those things that we Christians have co-opted and sort of taken our inspiration from sort of pagan and indigenous cultures. Because across the world, and we see an example of it, here is this celebration of Dia de los Muertos, which is a Christianization of indigenous peoples here in the United States, but also before that, All Saints' Day in Europe was sort of a Christianization of Roman celebrations and also Anglo celebrations and Celtic celebrations. And so I find that fascinating, that it doesn't matter. Across the world, there is this universality that people knew deep in their hearts, spiritually, that there was something about this time of the year where, as they say, the veil grows thin. Where these two things that we thought were so opposite, death and life, earth and heaven, don't seem to be so far apart from one another. And so this is why we put All Saints' Day, the date that it is, and why we've been observing it for over 1,000 years on this date. Because this is the Beatitudes. This is the Jesus who speaks to us in terms of blessings and woes, not as opposites, but as just two sides of the same coin, two sides of our life. That our life is going to be both blessing and woe, and it will not be one thing, and it will not be the other thing. It will be this beautiful, ugly mess of both of those things. And the thing about us Christians is that we worship a God who is the embodiment of this thinness. The embodiment of a God who is not one thing or another, but is truly, fully earthly and human and heavenly and divine. So today, I recognize it's hard for many of us because it asks us to, in community, be brave enough to look grief in the face and to ritualize and name that grief. And I know that is the church is asking all of us to do a really hard thing that in our typical culture we don't typically ask people to do. But the only reason we do is because we know this truth of the Beatitudes. That when Jesus comes near to us, things are going to change. That this is a day for us to welcome Jesus, who is able to talk about all of life, not just the good bits of life or the bad bits of life, but is talking about the blessings and the woes of life. And that whether you are coming here and you are lighting a candle and you feel like you are one of those poor, sad, grief-stricken people and there will be no way out, that Easter candle here is to remind you of the resurrection and to remind you that that's not going to be the case. That bitterness will turn sweet. It will not leave you. You will never forget those who you love. But it will be transformed. Those of you who weep now, blessed are you because Jesus will draw near and you will laugh and smile. And those of us who maybe are thinking, well, today will be easy for me. Woe to you. Woe to you. Maybe if not today. Woe, and also thank God that will not be the case. That also you too will draw near to this Easter candle, which is not just a reminder of resurrection, but a reminder that our God doesn't just jump to the joy. That our God also died in order to get here. Our God is not just a God of happy, good feelings. Our God is also a God of death, who experienced death, who conquered death, but who did experience it. And so, both a blessing and a woe to you, and that I would hope that you will experience that gift of any of those memories and any of that grief that has grown cold, that maybe it will be ignited by that gift of grief. To remind you that our God is holding that too. And that in God's memory, no one is forgotten. So today, you all are saints. We talk about the saints as those in heaven, and that is true, but today you all are saints. Because you have already in your possession the Beatitudes. You already have in your possession the blessings and the woes of this life. And more important than that, you have a God who has named you as his own. And not just the good parts. And not just the happy parts. But God is willing to also hold the sad parts and the grieving parts. There is nothing that you are experiencing that our God cannot hold. Our God lives in this thin space where we light candles, where we name names, where we reflect on pictures, where we pray that we will all experience the culmination of all the blessings and woes of this life one day in heaven. Amen.